In this lesson, we'll be looking at while loops in Python. A while loop is a means of continuously executing a block of code as long as a condition is true. So the structure of a while loop involves first using the while keyword, followed by your test. So this is the condition that needs to be true for this block of code or this loop to continue executing. Here I'm just using the Boolean value of true, which means that this while loop will execute indefinitely or until a break command is hit within the loop itself. Once again, you should notice that the structure matches that of our if statements as well as our for loops, in that the while statement itself ends with a colon, and then the block of code that makes up the loop is indented. So let's create a simple while loop example, one that's not going to run forever. Here I'm just going to create a counter object. I'm going to start it at 10. And now, while counter is greater than 0, we're just going to print the value of our counter. If I were to run this code as is, this would again create an infinite loop. And that's because our counter value is never changing. So right now, it's always going to be 10. To change this, I'm going to decrement our counter inside of the loop. So this is just going to be counter minus equals 1. So each time through this loop, it's going to subtract 1 from our counter. Now, when I execute this code, nothing happens. And that's because my conditional should be greater than 0. So let's execute this now. And you can see that I'm starting at 10 and working down to 1. Now it should be noted that if I were to accidentally not include counter inside of the indented while loop, this code will never get executed. And once again, you're going to have an infinite loop. While loops can be quite useful, but you do have to exercise some caution. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself having to restart Maya. Now, as with for loops, we can use the break as well as the continue keywords to alter the execution of our loop. So here I'm going to add in an if statement. And if counter equals 5, then we'll just break. So we'll just end execution of this code. If I execute this, you can see my countdown starts at 10 and ends at 6. I can change this to skip the number 5 by using continue. And with that, even in this simple example, I just created an infinite loop for myself. And that's because when counter equals 5, it's automatically ending the current iteration of this loop. So it's jumping back up to the start of my while loop. And this means that counter is never decrementing. So once it hits 5, it will stay at 5 indefinitely. Now to fix this, I can simply also decrement my counter when I hit 5. Now when I execute the code, everything works as expected. I'm skipping the number 5 in my output. And as I said before, take care when you're creating your while loops. It really is a pain to have to go in and kill the Maya process. Now, as with for loops, you can also use an else statement with your while loop. So I can do else, and I'm just going to again print break not hit. So this works the exact same way. The only time the else is executed is if a break is not hit. So in this case, there's no break even in my while loop, so I can guarantee that the else statement will be executed. But if I change this back to if counter equals 5 break, now that else statement is not going to be executed. As just one additional example of a while loop, I'm going to be using myString. So while myString, and that's to say while myString is not empty, so if you recall, an empty string returns false. I'm going to first print myString, and then I'm going to strip off the first character. So myString equals myString. And now I'm going to use slicing to slice off the first character. I can now execute this, and you'll see that the MyPython string has the first character removed after each iteration of the loop. And when there are no characters left in my string, the while loop ends. Both for and while loops are important concepts to understand, and you will likely find yourself using these in almost all of your scripts.